Module number 2, your brand. What is a brand? A brand is a product or service that you're selling to a potential client to obtain revenue. My brand is public speaking. My mission within my brand is to help inspire you to take accountability and to help you become your own CEO of your own life. As a speaker, when I talk to my clients, I try to tell them about the things I did in my own life to help me be successful. But more importantly, I tell them my mistakes so they can avoid those same errors. That is part of your mission. This is what you have to identify as a speaker. What is your mission? What is your brand? Again, my brand is speaking. I have multiple facets of my brand to drive revenue. Books, speaking engagements, online courses, appearances, speaking academies, podcasts, online coaching. These are a lot of different streams of revenue and facets of my speaking brand. So these are the facets that I have used to help build my successful speaking brand. There are multiple types of brands in the industry. There's speaking, there's life coaching, there's real estate, there's automotive, there's entertainment. These are different brands that we're going to help you figure out which lane or facet should you choose that's best for you, and then help you learn how to take the steps to market it so you can become successful in your own right. Here are a couple things that make my speaking brand different than other speaking brands out there on the market. I am a big storyteller. I tell you my experiences, therefore I'm transferring my emotion onto you. So you can actually feel and the passion and feel the joys and or the pains of what I'm talking about. The best speakers do that. Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, they all make you feel their story. I also help give people purpose and create faith that they can use their experiences in their lives to be successful. I communicate openly and I tell you exactly who I am, and I'm honest and I'm vulnerable with my speaking. I feel this is really key in how I become successful in such a short amount of time with a lot of hard work and perseverance. Again, it's by being honest, being vulnerable, and connecting with my audience in an emotional, driven facet. So those were examples of what I have done to help connect with my audience and differentiate myself as a speaker in this industry. Here are some things that you should do to help you differentiate yourself as a speaker in the industry to get ahead. Be very passionate and authentic with your story. Speak to people through your emotions and help them attach to you and to connect with your story that much more powerfully. Invest time with your clients before and after you speak. This is crucial in helping you expedite the process of expanding your brand to a higher level. Make people okay with their story so they can learn to communicate points of their lives to others when they're speaking in casual conversation. Be sure when you're speaking that your story resonates with everyone in the room. Doesn't matter if they're a higher level or a lower level. When you're able to resonate with your audience, it makes you a much more powerful and impactful speaker. Here is a big one. Learn to be authentic and have drive to help others succeed. 4 years ago, I started my brand with the simple fact of trying to help others avoid my catastrophic losses so they could have prosperity in their own lives. If you really care about your audience and want them to be successful, it has to shine through. So again, this is a big one. Be authentic and have drive to help others succeed, and you will have success as well. Another good point is you want to create faith and belief that people can be successful. It's kind of funny. When speakers I heard in my past made me actually believe that I was worth more, I was able to want to achieve more. So it's truly important that you make people have belief in themselves, therefore believing in you, and that's going to help you expand your brand overall. Developing your brand is really about taking experiences and your expertise from your other profession and transferring it into your current profession. I'll never forget, I was 15 years old and I saw this little short guy who was on the football field when my brother was drafted by the Ravens in 1996. And this little short guy was Bill Belichick. And I remember going up to him and saying hello and all this type of stuff and making fun of him. And once he ended up becoming the coach of the Patriots, I remember some things he said about leadership, about being able to have others follow you by action, not by talk. That was critical, and I've never forgotten it, and I'm 36 years old today. Bill Belichick talked about the best leaders lead by actions, not by words. He's now one of the winningest coaches in the NFL, has the most Super Bowls of any coach in the NFL, and he's truly a winner in every sense of the word. So again, taking that from my past and bringing it into my current career as a speaker helps me to develop my brand. So for you, try to find experiences from your past life or past experience that you can bring into your new career to help you get the edge and become more of a top tier person in your brand and more successful overall. So now we have brand versus branding. Brand is the product that you create trying to sell to consumers. Branding is the art of creating messaging around your product to obtain and retain loyal paying customers. Within your brand, in order to obtain success, you should have a benchmark. I tell people all the time, give it 5 years when you start your own business to help you obtain success and reach profitability. There are ways to help expand your brand and to grow your footprint and to become more credible and to hopefully become an expert as well. I'll be touching on these things in later modules to help you build up your credibility and become that expert in your own brand. The number one reason why I public speak, or my why to being a speaker, is to help people become successful in their own right. I have so much passion and so much energy because I have been through a lot of tough times in my life. I remember for 30 straight months, I did not get one paid speaking job. But my why kept me going. It wouldn't allow me to quit. The next day I said, Marques, if you don't get a paid speaking job, this is it. You're done. Go get a job. And I kept convincing myself day after day after day that my why and my purpose was bigger than just me being a speaker. It was to help inspire, help educate, and help make people aware that when they have bad times in their lives, as long as you have faith and believe in you, no matter what other people say about you, you can be successful. So that is my why. I want to help others be successful where I failed in parts of my life early on. So I'm sure you're probably wondering, well, how do I find my why? Or where do I even start? Well, I'm going to tell you where I started. I started by watching videos on YouTube of Tony Robbins. I figured I'm going to become a speaker. I might as well watch the best. He's been doing it for years and years and years, very successful, has built a brand and a legacy for himself. So I would tell you to find someone in your brand or in your chosen field to follow. With the internet and with Google and with YouTube, you can look at videos or listen to podcasts. Find someone that is in your lane, that is currently successful, and follow that person. Don't reinvent the wheel. When you're searching or trying to find what your brand is, here's my challenge to you. What makes you unique? For me, I found I was a great leader from playing in the NFL to running a business. And then as I was becoming a speaker, as I started getting more credibility and getting more notoriety, people started to follow what I was doing. So I took leadership as my unique trait to help me build my brand as a speaker. So for you, what makes you you? What makes you unique? So you're probably wondering, what makes me unique? What I would tell you to do is to ask someone that's close to you, a loved one, a coworker, ask them, hey, what do you think makes me unique? Or what do you think makes me me? People in your circle that care about you are going to give you honest feedback, and they're going to give you constructive criticism, and they're going to help you along your journey. So I would strongly suggest find somebody that's in your inner circle, ask them what makes you unique, and you can start there. Now that you've identified or you've begun the journey to figure out what makes you unique, here's my call to action for you. Start to soul search. Truly sit down in a room, close the door, cut the TV off, cut your phone off, and look at yourself in the mirror and search your soul to find out, okay, this makes me unique, but now it's time to put it into action. And I'm going to challenge you to write down some things about you that you found while soul searching to help you start and to help you build your legacy today. So you're probably thinking, hey, Marques, what audiences do you speak to? Well, there's a 3-tier scale that I have. Number 1 is the youth. That includes high school and below. Tier 2 is going to be colleges and universities. And then tier 3 is corporate America. And corporate America is the hardest one to get into, but once you do, that's where the real money is as a professional speaker. So, some audiences that I've spoken for: female sports teams, male sports teams, the NFL, corporate America, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, medical conferences, sales conferences. I've been around so many types of people. As a matter of fact, I did a conference in Atlanta for one client, and I got heard by another client, and they now hired me for 5 times the amount that that client in Atlanta paid me to go speak in Vegas in February. It's all about being able to be diverse and have different audiences that you can talk to about different things. Your messaging will always be the same type of message, but your delivery and your approach should be different. When I talk to youth teams and organizations, I'm much more smiling, I'm much more hands-on, I'm much more giddy, because I want to really show the youth that with hard work, perseverance, and a good positive attitude, you can be successful. When I talk more corporate America, I'm much more, firm, I'm very relaxed, but I'm much more getting my point across, because the audience has to understand that they're driven by revenue increasing and profitability, and that's important for me to get across. What is an audience? An audience is somebody that's gonna actually pay you or invite you to speak to them about your story. Again, you have the 3-tier scale. You have the youth, you have the universities, and you have corporate America. In order to get to corporate America, it'd be great if you could just kind of start off there and get paid big money, but that's not realistic. You have to start at the lower scale, which is usually the youth. Football teams, sports teams, Boys and Girls Club, YMCA. I remember starting out as a speaker, I did a lot of those things for low pay, $500 or less, but most of the time it was free in the beginning. When I got to universities, I got paid between $1,500 to $3,500 as I started to work my way up the scale. When I got into my first corporate job, it was $5,000 and above. So again, this is the natural process you're going to have to go through as a speaker, starting at the lower level, then getting to the mid, and then getting up to the higher. Don't get discouraged if you have to speak for free in the beginning. That's just part of the process. I've been through it. I'm sure Robbins has been through it. I'm sure Grant Cardone went through it. But as you build credibility, the revenue will start to come, I promise. Like we talked about earlier, I've crafted 3 main types of presentations for my clients. Again, it is the art of transition, climbing back from hitting rock bottom, and how to use real leadership to inspire greatness and success. People ask me all the time, Marques, what am I supposed to talk about in my presentations? And I laugh every time and I say the same thing. You have to ask the client, what do they want you to talk about to their audience? When you're discussing with the client what they want you to talk about, here's some things you should ask. What is the problem that your company is having? Why is your company not increasing revenue or becoming more profitable? You should offer them some potential strategies and teaching tips that they can utilize to help them and their employees become more successful and obtain more profitability. Once you have agreed upon the teaching points and the steps you are going to take to talk to their audience, you can then start to build a presentation that is tailored to your client. And I tell people all the time, you should have a short story in the beginning, then you should have your personal journey, then you should challenge the audience with a burning question, you should give them strategies to help relieve that problem, and then you should close with a final thought or a final call to action. So as I mentioned earlier, I have 3 main verticals and or stories. The art of transition, how to bounce back from hitting rock bottom, and how to use real leadership to inspire success. What I have done is I have taken stories and teaching tips and really just passionate examples from my life, and I've created my presentations. So my call to action for you is to look at your own life, evaluate your stories. What do you have that can be looked at as a way to help people relieve problems? And then start to create your own presentation, your own story to eventually sell or to help speak to clients that want to hire you around certain topics. Here is one vital thing that I didn't even get until about 4 weeks ago. My good friend Steve Carlos, one of the owners of 2 Market Media, told me, Marques, you have to connect your story or presentations like a string through balloons. This way you are creating a movie with an intro, with a body, and an end. If you don't have string going through balloons, connecting them to one another, your presentation will have gaps. And what will happen is people will not be able to connect with you and or follow you while you're speaking. And if that happens, you won't get invited back or you won't get rehired. It's vital that your presentation connects to your audience like strings through 5 balloons. That way, your presentation and your speech will connect better with your audience. As we've been talking about throughout this course, I have 3 tiers or verticals that I talk about a lot to my clients. But what I do to make each presentation geared towards my specific client is I always change the opening and the approach. This is vital. If you are being hired to talk about leadership, but your opening is more about accountability as far as bouncing back from hitting rock bottom, or if you're being hired to talk about transition and you're talking in your opening about finance or leadership, you're going to have a big disconnect from the start. It is vital that in the first 60 seconds, your audience has to connect with you right away. Otherwise, they will not listen to your presentation with the same attentiveness as you are trying to get them to do. When you're public speaking, you have to know your group. Is it a business group? Is it a coaching group? Is it the youth group? It's vital that you are able to connect and understand who you're talking to. This way you can gear your presentation towards that specific audience. I remember speaking for AMAT in Atlanta, Georgia. It was probably my most passionate, difficult speech to date. It was a speech about kidney failure and donation. The speech was about organ donation. My father passed away about 11 years ago because he never got a kidney transplant. In that speech, I was very emotional. It was the first time I probably cried in front of an audience, maybe ever. But by doing that and being authentic and vulnerable and honest, the audience connected with me very strongly. They felt what I felt when I told them the story of how I had to drive from Baltimore to Washington in like half an hour on BW Parkway at 2:30 in the morning to try to get to my father who was going into cardiac arrest. Using that story from my life and bringing it into my presentation made me much more well received by the audience I was talking to. That's an example of when you're speaking to people or to your potential clients or new clients, it's important to bring stories from your past to help connect even better with your future audience. Perfecting takeaways for your audience. It's vital that you know your audience very well. Is it more of a corporate audience? Is it more athletes? Is it more conservative? Is it more liberal? Are they fiscally challenged? Are they well off? When you know who you're talking to, you can take stories from your life and construct them to your presentation to really help you connect and attach even greater to your audience. So when I talk about leadership with the youth, I talk about more of my football stories. If I'm doing a financial planning or financial speech or literacy type of presentation, I talk more about being, well off in the NFL and then losing it all in my construction company. It's just really important to know who's listening to your speech to help you construct stories to reach them and connect with them even better. When you create stories to match the audience's background, you're on your way to success. Again, I have leadership, transition, bounce back from hitting rock bottom. What is your story? Is it perseverance? Is it bouncing back from hitting rock bottom? Is it overcoming an addiction? For me, when I got the trash on my bare skin at work as a janitor, I realized I was at rock bottom. I realized that I had to climb out and claw out to get back to where I want to be in my life. So I took that part of my life and I constructed a presentation to help others be successful. So that was my first and main why. So again, what's yours? Figure that out, figure out what you can do to be successful and help others reach success, and you've got something really, really special. When you're talking to people, you have to express both the pain and what makes you great and what has helped you to bounce back, to reach greatness. That way they can identify teaching tips they can utilize in their own lives. Your story has to come from within. For example, I talk about being a professional athlete, leaving football, starting a successful construction company, losing it all, and then becoming a janitor, and then now becoming a public speaker. Your story is, again, telling people who you are, and it builds credibility with your audience so they know when you're talking, you're coming from a position of being an expert. You should construct your story like the hero's journey or like one of my favorite books, Act Like a Success, Think Like a Success by Steve Harvey. Talking about the trials, the tribulations, what you've been through, what you've gone through, great pain, great loss, but then also how you utilize great points in your life or great teaching tips to help you ascend or be like the phoenix that rises from the ashes. So again, construct your story or your presentation like the hero's journey. This way people can relate to your loss and your pain, but you're also giving them vital teaching points or teaching tips to help them ascend and be successful in their own everyday lives. Here's another call to action. I want you to identify 5 things in your life that you think are vital teaching tips that people will pay you for as a speaker to help them become successful in their own lives. I want you to identify them, list them, and then explain them. And then once you've done that, start to figure out what type of audience would pay you to hear you talk. Can you tie in the teaching tips and or points throughout the entire presentation? Your teaching tips and or points should construct your entire message. This way, you should be able to relate and connect with your audience at the highest level throughout your entire speech. Once the client tells you the problem they want solved, begin to construct your message. You should open with a short story geared towards the topic you are discussing. Then the next part of your presentation should be your personal journey to build credibility and connect with your audience. Once you've done that, you should then challenge the audience with a burning question. Once you challenge the audience with a burning question, you should give them strategies to relieve that problem. And then you should have a final call to action, looking to drive results and success in those people's everyday lives. This is probably one of the most vital parts of this course. As a public speaker, can you turn your presentation into takeaways that the audience can use to be successful and not just be a motivation person? Motivation comes from being honest, relatable, vulnerable, accountable. Teaching points are actual takeaways. The best speakers in the world, Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, are the master of speaking to people through presentations, but giving them actual teaching tips that they can utilize in their own lives. So again, if you want to be the best of the best as a speaker, you have to start giving people teaching points and or takeaways that they can utilize in their own lives so they can reach greatness as well. When I talk about leadership, the main teaching point I want people to leave the room with is accountability. A good example of that is a couple of weeks ago, I got a note from my good friend, Mr. Mark Volk, the president of Lackawanna College. He's a retired colonel in the U.S. Army. He has a pedigree that's through the roof. And he told me, Marques, I'm reading your book right now to help me grow to become a better leader. When people start identifying you as an expert in a certain lane, like leadership or accountability or business, you can start to drive more people to want to hear you speak. So again, you have to construct teaching points and or takeaways that are going to really be your bread and butter. So when people hire you, they're going to know before you walk into the room what is your expertise. We're coming to the end now of module number 2. Here's my call to actions for you. Write down 5 teaching tips that you can create a presentation off of that are going to challenge your audience to start figuring out their teaching tips, their takeaways to reach success in their own lives.